All right. So, first things first, as all things, we start in with the very serious question. Are you a boy or a girl? Which one did you choose, Chase?
I want to be a pretty May.
You wanted to be May? To be honest, I always chose the boy because I thought like his white on top of him was a hair for like the longest time.
Yeah, finally, a trainer for the Naruto generation.
Exactly.
Alright, but we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. Pokemon
Sure.
Emerald is, of course, the final combined version of the third generation of the Pokemon games, Ruby and Sapphire. It was released in Japan on September 16th, 2004 for the Game Boy Advance, developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo.
Quite a lot of names that are still around today.
Yeah, small little indie company Nintendo. Maybe you've heard of them.
Maybe, but I don't think you do have.
A few things that this generation brought to the table for Pokemon. It introduced double battles, which I think are pretty cool.
Definitely was one of the highlights.
It introduced natures and innate abilities into Pokemon, which just helps add to the immersion. It added Pokemon beauty contests and, one of my personal favorite features, secret underground bases.
Really?
Yeah, I
I mean,
always liked the secret underground bases as a mechanic. Your home away from home.
I understand that. To be honest, like it was all right for the secret underground bases. Not really my cup of tea, to be honest.
With Generation 3, it introduced 135 new Pokemon, bringing the total number at the time to 386 Pokemon, which, looking back on it now, several generations later, that's baby numbers.
Yeah, and speaking of which, from this generation, what was personally your favorite Pokemon?
I wrote down a few of my personal favorites. Honestly, I think with this one, Pokemon Emerald has one of my favorite starting lineup trio of Pokemon. Looking at these three starters, I think each one of them could be one of my favorite go-tos. We got Trico, Mudkip, and Torchic, all three of which I think are just so perfect. I mean, a gecko, a chicken, and
And a mudfish, it seems like,
I don't.
right?
No, actually, I wrote it down. I think Mudkip is a axolotl, or like one of those water
Oh,
lizard things.
Axolotl, yeah.
Yeah, bit of a,
Yeah.
chickens, geckos, axolotls, common pets.
Very common, of course.
Looking back on it, this was kind of my Pokemon generation because when I was very young, I was a little too young to catch like the Gen 1 and Gen 2 big Pokemon craze of the late 90s, early 2000s. But I mean, I definitely knew older kids like my cousins and some friends that were definitely into it. But with Generation 3, that was kind of when I started getting into Pokemon. I never really played the game Emerald all that much. I did have it on Game Boy Advance and I know I did play it, but I don't think I ever got too far in it. For some reason with Pokemon, I wasn't really into the games. I was more into the anime and the card game. I mean, I enjoyed the games well enough, but I just never really played the games too well until I got a bit older. I think it was around Black and White and X and Y. That's when I started getting more into the games.
Definitely with Black and White, X and Y, they have better animations, of course, because pretty much our animations for back in Gen 3 was literally bounce two times. Guess what? That means you tackled them. Good job. But bringing it back to the starters, how'd you like their designs as well? Because
Oh yeah,
I mean, Trico's design I love the most, to be honest, especially with like the grass sticking out of his mouth and him just being like either hug me or he's about to scare somebody in front of him, trying to make himself look big.
I think of the three starters, while I do enjoy all three, I think Trico is my personal favorite, but that's just because I'm a sucker for anything lizard-like. I just like reptiles. But I think Torchic might be my second favorite, but I can't decide. This is one of my favorite starter lineups here. I can't really pick a favorite.
Actually, my favorite overall has to be Mudkip. I mean, I know it's a fan favorite from that generation, but talking about that cute boy turn to their evolutions, getting a little ahead of myself, to their big beefy boy actions, it's fantastic to me. And I especially liked how the combination of water and ground, and guess what? Because he had those types, he only had one weakness, and that was grass. And really,
Oh yeah, he's a
I
water
don't think
type.
they're what. Yeah, well, yeah, he's a water type, but the thing is, because he had ground, weak to electric, but because he had ground, he is immune to electric attacks. That's what made him so good, especially against the fourth gym, which was electric based. Mudkip is great, and I think I would definitely have a pet Mudkip if I could.
Mudkip is a cute little boy or girl.
Whatever one that you got with the modest nature, or I think there's also bubbly. I can't remember.
Going beyond the starters, Generation 3 added a lot of really good new Pokemon to the roster. A few notable Pokemon, at least I think, are pretty cool that were added this generation. We got Wurmple, which is just a cute little caterpillar thing. We got Sharpedo, I mean, it's a shark. Torpedo, how can you not like that?
Exactly.
We got Flygon, which I think I had a plushie of Flygon when I was a kid.
Shoot, what did he evolve from?
It was like the dragonfly looking thing.
Yeah, it was that one, and I never really expected that Flygon to be coming from that insect Pokemon. I mean, the first time I ever saw Flygon back in 2007 or something like that, there was this game called Pokemon Battle Royale, and it had no, not Pokemon Battle Royale. I was thinking of the movie. I think it was with Gen 3, and it had the Jirachi. Saw Flygon there, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. But I can never really find him in game because I was too young as a kid to really think things through.
Yeah. Just a couple other Pokemon favorites of mine from this generation. We got Sableye, which was based off an actual alien encounter in the 1950s, the Hopkinsville Goblins.
I didn't know that. Do you want to like elaborate a little bit on that? Or...
Yeah, so Sableye, its design is like this weird alien-looking goblin thing, and so in the 1950s, I forget what year, in Kentucky, Hopkinsville, Kentucky, a group of people were hanging out in not a cabin, but like a rural house, like way off in the woods of Kentucky somewhere, and all of a sudden, they apparently were attacked by a group of weird goblin-looking alien things. They said that they came down from this weird ball of light, surrounded the house, and was throwing rocks at them. It would like try to scratch and claw at them and try to get in through the windows. And this being rural Kentucky, the people in the house got their shotguns and rifles and shot back at the aliens and eventually chased them off.
Oh, that sounds like a great redneck American Christmas right there.
Yeah, the Hopkinsville encounter. If you are a fan of Sableye, I recommend looking into it. It's just a funny little alien urban folklore.
Anyways, you were talking about
also Gardevoir was added this generation, which do not Google Gardevoir.
Yeah,
that
Gardevoir.
Pokemon has forever been tainted.
Yeah, that was I'll just put an awakening for a lot of people on the internet.
Deviant artists be like, it's free real estate.
Rule 34.
All right, and just the final normal like Pokemon, well, not normal type, but just like the non-legendary mythical Pokemon is Spheal. I just like Spheal.
Spheal is cool, but you want to know one that I always thought had an awesome design, personally, was Manectric.
Yeah, I think that one's
blue
cool.
Yeah, that blue and yellow, and then just kind of like, even though he has like a comb for a head, I don't know, I just really love dogs, and seeing Manectric or Electric, like a godsend to me. Also, Electric was favorite type at the time. May I ask, what was your favorite type?
I've always been partial to water and ghost Pokemon. I don't know what it is about water and ghost types, but I just really like that lineup of Pokemon. Haunter is my favorite ghost type, and I just think he has such a simple yet really cool, sleek design. Whenever it comes to starters, I just generally lean towards the water starter. I don't know exactly why. Maybe it's just because the water starter has always been my personal favorite of the lineup.
Water types usually are pretty strong. I mean, water is definitely like, would you say it's the strongest type out of the three types that are offered as starters?
I think it depends on which generation, because I know in Gen 1, Charmander was generally the preferred favorite starter. But I mean, if there's anything anyone can say about Pokémon Emerald Gen 3, it's that it had way too much water in it. All right, it's time for another surf session. Yes, trainer.
Exactly.
So, with this generation, the two signature legendaries, at least for Ruby and Sapphire, were Groudon and Kyogre. Kyogre, darn. Yeah, I played Ruby, so.
Well, I didn't really have Ruby or Sapphire. I just played the Emerald version.
Emerald's legendary being Rayquaza, one of my personal favorite legendaries.
Yeah, Rayquaza. My real love, I guess, especially the design. But I will say Kyogre, probably my second, and then Groudon kind of being my last. I don't know, just like having a big dinosaur lava creature, like it sounds metal, but it wasn't really for me. So Kyogre just had to be my little fish angel of the sea.
Personally, I thought Gen 4, Diamond and Pearl, had the best legendaries in my humble opinion, but I've always been partial to Rayquaza. I just really like Rayquaza.
Dude, just having a flying serpent snake in the sky, wasn't he I think he had inspiration from the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl,
Yeah, that
who's
wouldn't
like,
surprise me. I did not fact check what the inspiration was for Rayquaza. I apologize, people, but yeah, that's most likely the inspiration.
it's called doing your job.
I'm
I'm just
sorry, I
kidding.
wrote down notes for everything else. Like,
Shut up. Oh,
for example, there were a few other legendaries added. We had Latios and Latios.
Shoot, was Latias and Latios? They were the kind of like twin-looking guys. One was red, one was blue, and they were like jets. Is that
Yeah, they
right?
were the twin jet Pokemon.
Yeah, those were a pretty cool design, and I always thought they were cute. Can you imagine if you just had a Latios or Latias just chilling and with you in your home, and then you're like,
Well,
oh,
I
I
just want any
gotta
Pokemon
go
to
to the
chill with
park.
me.
Yeah, well,
Maybe
there
not
are
Mr.
some better
Mime,
than
but
that, and not muck, not muck. Like that would get everywhere or coughing.
there were
I
also
would.
the two mythical Pokemon added this generation. You mentioned one earlier. We had Jirachi and Deoxys.
Yeah, Jirachi is like a fun little cute, but I gotta say, Deoxys, the spaghetti arm looking dude, he might have some Italian in him or something, but he is awesome.
I really like Deoxys as a concept, this space alien that's come down.
Yeah, and he's just like, "What's up, fam?" And then just pulverizes everything.
Was Deoxys the first Pokemon to really touch upon the whole, like, alien theme? Because I know later Pokemon games have gone in that direction a bit more, but was
I'm
Deoxys?
I'm not sure on that really. I'm not 100% sure, but at the very least, he was definitely one of the early like toes in the water. The Jirachi, I can't remember. I think the Jirachi even spoke, which I always thought was kind of cool. I think that was one of the very first Pokemon to actually like speak besides Meow.
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 I mean, like we touched on with Gardevoir, I think Pokemon been the spark for a few things online. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about
Yeah.
the plot of Pokemon Emerald.
All right, yeah. So first, like I said in the beginning, are you a boy or a girl?
What
And
if I
then-
choose to be non-binary?
Yeah, like
You know, we can
you
be a
know,
little more progressive around here.
they were just behind their times.
But Pokemon Emerald, it takes place in the Hoenn region, which I think is based off of Japan's southern island Kyushu, I want to say it's pronounced. Apologies, I am not a native Japanese speaker.
How's it spelled in English?
Kyushu, Kyushu, I want to say it's pronounced.
Kyushu? Maybe. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
that's what
anyways,
Wikipedia told me, so.
yeah, thank you, Wikipedia. Reliable.
But yes, the Hoenn region, it's a much more tropical region.
The Hoenn region kind of didn't really feel tropical to me, to be honest. It kind of felt like there were a lot of trees and deep
Yeah,
forests.
I say that in that
but-
it's intended to come off as tropical because that's kind of what Kyushu is sort of like. Given, I think, the graphical limitations of the time and what they were working with of the Pokemon art style, a little more difficult to convey. But that would explain why there's so much water everywhere.
That would make sense.
In a first for the Pokemon series, in this game, you have both parents.
What? We have a dad?
Well, I mean, he leaves right at the start to go be a gym leader, but yes, he exists alongside your mother.
Thanks, Dad.
So the game begins with you, the trainer, either Brendan or May, depending on which gender you pick, being the new kid in town, moving into sleepy Little Root Town, way down in the rural area, down in the sticks.
And also what I found was kind of cool, but also kind of funny at the same time is when you choose one of them, it also chose which house you were in, you know?
Yeah, I thought
Like
that
what-
was a cute little detail. And of course, whichever character you did not pick becomes your main rival.
Exactly.
So if you picked May, then Brandon becomes your rival.
Is it Brandon or Brendan?
I think
can't
it's
remember.
Brendan. I apologize. I'm kind of
How
just...
dare you? You butchered his godlike name.
But yes, the plot really kicks off when you go for a walk and you notice that the local professor, Professor Birch, is being attacked by a wild Poochyena, picking up one of the three starters
Was
on the
it
ground.
Poochyena? I thought it was a Zigzagoon.
I think it's a Poochyena.
And then he's like, "Hey, you trainer over there!
Quick, grab
Uh,
my Pokemon!
Grab the Pokemon and choose one and fight it."
I mean, this is the equivalent of, like, in the real world, you see a guy getting attacked by a dog, and he's like, hey, you, 10-year-old kid, grab my gun on the ground.
Yeah, something like that. But except this is more like pitting two animals to the death.
But then you pick up one of the three starters, and after you fend off the either Zigzagoon or Poochyena, depending on which version, Professor Birch says, you know, you've known this Pokemon for a good 30 seconds. I think I should let you keep it.
Yeah, it's a great thing to give a, 10-year-old kid a chance for one of the deadliest weapons on Earth.
Yeah, that's the thing about Pokemon Pokemon. You know, it's like, hey, okay, son, you're 10 years old now. It's time for you to go off on your own into the real world with a very dangerous animal that could easily murder a bunch of people if you don't control it right.
Exactly. Oh, by the way, I think there's a dark theory on why people send their kids out at 10 years
Look, man,
old.
if we're gonna talk about dark Pokemon theories, we're gonna be
I'm
here all
sorry.
day.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, he just takes you back to the Pokemon lab, gives you the rundown of what your objective is. You know, go out, defeat the gym leaders, eventually defeat the Elite Four, become the very best like no one ever was. Here's your rival. In this one, they introduce a kind of secondary rival in the form of Wally.
Yeah, fuck that kid.
I like Wally.
Sorry.
He's just
I don't like Wally.
but he's just trying his
He's
best.
annoying.
I
It's
just
like
want to see how strong you
if
are.
he tried his damn best, he would have won against me. He had one of the best Pokemons, which was, guess what? He got a Ralts, which became a Gardevoir. Yeah, so
I like Wally though. I think he's just like this young, kind of sickly kid who's just trying to prove himself that he just builds self-confidence, and you destroy him every time.
pretty much, we just kind of kick him down to the dirt. Probably not good for his mental health. Basically, the professor's like, my daughter May or my son Brendan. Yeah. And so then to go look for them, sort of other side of this field of forest and through a town. So that's kind of like your first experience with the
It's
wilds,
the pretty
too.
standard Pokemon plot. If you've played any Pokemon game, you pretty much get the Cliff Notes version of what the plot is. Gotta defeat the 8 gyms, you gotta defeat the villain group of the game, who in this case are Team Aqua and Team Magma. You want to talk about them for a little bit?
I think we should talk about them when we get to the deep forest, because I still want to kind of talk about the story for a little bit.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Our rival will then have whatever Pokemon you had. So if you chose Trico, they got Torchic. And then if you chose Torchic, they got Mudkip, so on and so forth. Basically, they kind of cheated on a test and seen what Pokemon you had. I thought it was always cheeky. I wish it was kind of random, but then again, it wouldn't be really a rival if I could easily, like, one-shot
Yeah,
their
they're supposed to be
powerful
intimidating,
Pokemon.
not like Wally.
Yeah, not like Wally.
There's not a whole lot to really say about the rival, though, because I feel like they don't impact the narrative all that much. I feel like starting with this generation, this is when the Pokemon games kind of started reducing the role the rival had on the story.
They were just kind of there for, like, gatekeeping, I think.
Well, they all pale in comparison to Gary Oak.
God, Gary. How many babes did he have in that car? Like 4?
I don't know, man. He's what, 10 years old? I don't think this is
I know. And I'm just like, geez, Gary. So then we get to the town with our father, and we're just like going into his gym. And then we get introduced to Wally the Bastard. This is where we come into Wally the
as
Bastard.
he is formerly known.
So the bastard is then like, yo, Big G, will you please
Yeah,
lend me
that's how
a
he
Pokemon?
talks.
Yeah, that's totally how he talked. Very much so. And so he gives him a Zigzagoon and just sends him, and we have to babysit this guy.
Sending a kid into a war zone with a Nerf gun.
And then we go back to the gym, and he's like, "You're my bestest friend."
Oh, see, that's why I like
Yeah.
Wally. He's just so optimistic.
No, screw Wally.
Oh.
Screw Wally.
Since we're here, you want to talk about the 8 gym leaders in the game?
Yeah, I guess we can talk about the 8 gym leaders. Let's start with the first one, Roxanne.
Get it? Roxanne? Rox?
Yeah, if
All
you
of
don't
the-
get it, why are you here?
The gym leaders in this game have a certain running gag with their naming and their typing. We got Brawly for fighting, Watson for electric, Flannery for fire, my personal favorite, Norman. He's normal.
Yep, that's our dad.
Winona for flying. The twins, Tate and is it Liza or Lisa? Anyway, they're the psychic typing. And then, depending on which version, in Emerald it's Juan, who's the water gym leader, but in Ruby and Sapphire it's Wallace.
Really? I actually didn't know that.
Well, the reason why Wallace is replaced by Juan as the water gym leader in Emerald is because in Emerald, Wallace gets promoted to be the regional champion after the Elite Four.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah, so in Ruby and Sapphire, the Elite Four champion is Steven, but in Emerald, it's changed to Wallace.
I guess I'm just confused, because when I played Emerald, it was Steven.
Anyway, as for the Elite Four, we got Sydney for Dark, Phoebe for Ghost, Glacia for Ice, and Drake for Dragon. I like Drake. Drake's cool.
Drake is a very cool being.
Let's talk about the main villains of the game, Team Magma and Team Aqua.
I'm all for Team Aqua. by the way.
I'm torn. It's like, on one hand, I really like the ocean. Ocean's pretty cool. But I am also a human, and humans cannot breathe underwater, so Team Magma might be in my best interest. I
But
don't
at the
know.
same time, you don't want no water. You need a balance. And these guys were going ape
Team
world.
Aqua and Team Magma, they are eco-terrorists, I guess, which, in the year of our Lord 2022 with climate change and global warming, they're a little bit more understandable in their motivations and goals.
Just one wants to flood the earth, and the other one wants to dry up the sea.
Perfectly good response, but they're coming from a good place to start with. They want to preserve the environment, but I feel like their execution could be a little better.
It's kind of shaky, to be honest.
Right.
Very brittle foundation.
So, depending on which version of Ruby or Sapphire, you would either have to fight Team Magma or Team Aqua. But in Emerald, you have to fight both of them. Best of both worlds.
Exactly. And to be honest, I do like the inclusion of Team Magma and Team Aqua because it kind of seems like, oh, I'm fighting two threats, which kind of makes it feel like I have a lot of odds against me compared to just having one team.
I just feel like their plans weren't the best thought out. Like, they could have spent a few more minutes brainstorming.
We got flood the earth right now. Press the button. Great stuff that was like, seems smart as a kid.
This is what brings Groudon and Kyogre into the plotline because both teams want to awaken the legendary Pokemon of their element and destroy everything.
Of course, like, why would we want to awaken an ancient possible evil? I don't know. For fun?
Because we
now,
can.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Science
they
isn't
can.
about why, it's about why not.
Why not, you stupid bastard? Speaking of, do you know who I'm talking about when I mentioned the spy earlier?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, didn't he want to like stop him or something? So he's like, "Yo, hey, 10-year-old kid,
You look like you can be trusted with national secrecy.
doesn't even like see you battle."
Yeah,
All right,
that's
I
the
think you
thing with
got it.
like every Pokemon story. Hey man, I'm just a kid just trying to play with all these cute animals, and next thing I know, I'm getting wrapped up in stopping domestic terrorism.
And in some versions, you actually have to fight like an anti-god. So then you kind of travel through the deep forest, and then you meet a business person. I can't remember his name, but he has a big fetish for Shroomish. Well, then we get introduced to our first encounter in Emerald. It's Team Aqua. Of course, if you're playing Ruby, you'll get Team Magma. So you fight, you beat him. Then the guy's like, "Oh my gosh, you saved me," and gives you your first Great Ball. Now, speaking of all the different Pokeballs, what's your favorite design?
Well, let's see. I, for one, am always a big fan of classic standard Pokeball. I mean, it's iconic, it's the Pokeball. What can you not do with it? As far as the more unique Pokeballs go, I personally really like the Master Ball's design. That purple, pink with the big M on the front. The fact that it can just guarantee catch everything.
I would say my favorite Dust Ball is actually a really awesome looking one.
Yeah, the black and green with the orange stripe going through it.
So after we beat Roxanne, we go out into the city and we see this businessman again. But basically, we have to go save a Wingull and we get to the second gym location. It's kind of like on a beach. Let's talk about Brawly,
Yeah,
right?
Brawly, not to be confused with Broly.
I found that gym to be kind of like the easiest. Fighting type's not really my favorite. I usually go for like flying types, anyways.
Yeah, I didn't really have too much difficulty with the fighting gym. Like you said, it's a pretty straightforward one. It's usually around this point that your starter Pokemon evolves to their second form, so yeah, you could overcome the second gym pretty quick.
Speaking of the second forms, let's talk about the designs real quick before we continue. So Grovyle, what do you think of his design? Very sleek, kind of leaf right on top of his head.
Yeah, I think Grovyle, I really like this look, this Velociraptor leaf looking thing. It looks really cool.
Grass type, they're pretty known for their designs, but in terms of viability and strength, they really don't have too much going for them as they're weak to just about everything. Going to Combuskin.
This is probably my
Look,
least favorite of the middle evolutions for this generation. I just don't really like Combuskin's look.
I can agree with that because it kind of looks like Torchic went on crack for a little bit.
It's a big dumb fire chicken.
I liked that it was kind of like a firefighting type. I will say if you do have Combuskin during this second gym, it's going to be a breeze by for you. And then for Mudkip, we have Marsh Stomp. Mudkip learns how to stand on two legs.
Not much to really say about Marshtomp. It's basically just Mudkip, but just bipedal, so...
Yeah, he just stares at you at the screen whenever you're playing against them and they just face you. So then you go toward the third city and you see your rival again. And now your rival has this Pokemon that's basically like a counter to your starter.
Yeah, they always pick the one that your starter is weak to.
You get past them, and I think they say add my digits or something like that at that point, which is kind
Ah,
of
the early
weird.
2000s, cell phone technology.
Then we finally get to the electric gym leader.
Watson,
What
get it? Watson.
Watson? Yeah. What sucks is that if you don't have March Stomp, I think it's like one of the hardest gyms because everything's fast, everything wants to paralyze you. It just gets annoying.
I just like to tempt his Voltorb into exploding itself. Come on, do it. Make us both happy.
Yeah, which I find is kind of weird. So, like, if it
How
self-destructs,
so?
does it actually die? Because it's self-destructed.
I
And
mean, you
I
can
know they,
still resurrect a Voltorb at a Poke Center, so I assume they just kind of, I don't know, hot glue gun all the pieces back together.
yeah, his innards are just all over the place. Just stuff him back in, he'll work it out. And moving on to the flying gym leader.
Winona, she also has a really nice lineup of some of my favorite Pokemon here. We got Swablu, which is so cute. Tropius, the dinosaur palm tree Pokemon, which is just so awesome. Pelipper, always a fan pleaser. Skarmory, which is, that one's annoying. And Altaria, it's just a floating...
Altaria, the fucking dragon. Why did they decide to make Altaria a dragon?
Because it's Puff the floating dragon. It's just a puffball. You
And
want to
then
talk
we
about
move
the
on.
third evolution of the starters?
Third evolution. Oh yeah, this is where it gets into it.
Let's start with Sceptile, the final evolution of Trico, the grass starter. I'm gonna be honest, I like Gravile a lot better in terms of look.
He looks like a Christmas tree, to be honest, except he's the bottom half of the
He
Christmas
just
tree.
looks smug.
Okay, I like where they were going, like sharp edges, but that tail kind of kills it. Just looks too much like a pine tree. And then those balls on the back of it, like too much like ornaments, man.
You know, now that you said it, I can't really unsee it. It does kind of look like a bit of a Christmas tree, but yeah, I like Gravile better. Gravile just looked a lot more sleek and cool, and come on, man. If I'm 11 years old playing Pokemon Emerald, I want the cool Pokemon.
Let's move on to Blaziken. Blaziken is probably the most cool, I think, and very original because, like, to me, he kind of looks like if Knuckles was just like as tall as an NBA player.
Yeah, I really like Blaziken's design. He definitely has the firefighting look to him. He
Mm-hmm.
radiates power.
And a lot of people rule 34 that guy.
A lot of people rule 34 most of the Pokemon. Any bipedal, vaguely humanoid Pokemon, don't Google image them. You're not going to have a fun time.
Yeah, yeah.
That just leaves the final evolution of Mudkip.
Swampert. So Swampert, still that water and ground, fantastic combo.
I definitely like
Types.
Swampert's look a lot better than Marshtomp. Like, Swampert actually looks distinct from Mudkip.
With the pose that he stands in, or his hands, really, like it looks like he like walks around on all fours still, but to move faster.
I think out of all three final evolutions, Swampert is probably my favorite just from a design standpoint.
Yeah, Swampert is like definitely a beast, but to be honest, I like Blaziken better. I don't know why. I think it has to do with the yellow,
Yeah,
like
Blaziken's
in
also got a
red.
pretty cool look to him.
Tate and Liza are the psychic duo.
They got some interesting Pokemon
Okay.
lineup for their roster. They got a
Yeah.
Xatu, a Claydol, Solrock, and Lunatone. Because you gotta have that astral symmetry.
I actually like Xatu,
Yeah, Xatu's a really cool one. I really like the Native American inspiration behind Xatu.
and not to mention, this is the first gym to actually incorporate the double battle.
I do wish they included more double battles a bit more because I really think it shakes up the dynamic a bit because not only do you have to think it a bit more strategy and have to contend with two enemy Pokemon at once, you can also throw out not just your favorite Pokemon but also your second favorite or the one that's in need of the most experience. It's just a good way to train your Pokemon faster.
And now we move on to our 8th gym leader.
Right, so
It could be
in the original...
Wallace or Steven.
Yeah, in Ruby and Sapphire, it's Wallace as the water gym leader, but of course, in Emerald, it's Juan.
He's the one.
Yeah. So, looking at Juan, he's got a pretty solid lineup. He's got a Love Disc, a Whiscrash, a Celio, Crawdont, and a Kingdra. Look at Celio, his Dr. Eggman looking thing. It's so cute. So, for Ruby and Sapphire, just for completionist's sake, what was Wallace's lineup?
Well, let's see here. Wallace's was for Ruby and Sapphire, Love Disc, Wish Cash, Celio, Seeking, and Milotic, which I really love the design of Milotic. Is it Milotic or Milotic?
Let's talk about the 3 signature legendaries. We got Rayquaza, Groudon, and Kyogre.
Those 3 are pretty awesome in my book.
Yeah, I really
But
like the whole behemoth Leviathan biblical analogy between Groudon and Kyogre. That's pretty cool.
yeah, Sky Serpent definitely packs a punch compared to the other 2, to be honest. He comes down and says, "Stop fighting." And then the 2 legendaries are like, "All right." And so then they stop. Then
All you
they
have to
basically
do is get an even bigger Pokemon to get everyone to stop fighting. World peace achieved.
world feast achieved. We just need to give someone maximum power and it'll be all right. And then, like, you have this fun little battle with Rayquaza, but I never really fight him. I usually just throw the Master Ball and just call it a day.
Yeah, man, you gotta get Rayquaza. What else are you gonna use the Master Ball on?
I don't know. I guess a Butterfree. There you go.
I
That's
mean,
a perfect one.
fair. I mean, Butterfree is pretty cool. Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about before heading into the Elite Four is the Battle Frontier, which was unique to this generation. So the Battle Frontier is a special area in the Hoenn region where you can go and battle various trainers throughout the area. So basically it replaces the Battle Tower from the base game.
That's interesting. I mean, I guess like they probably wanted to change things up a bit.
The guy who runs it is just named Scott. That's pretty fun.
Scott.
Scott. Everyone likes Scott. Come on, man.
Scott, get us a beer. Get us a beer, Scott. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have too much experience in this part of.
Basically, just a sort of epilogue thing where after you complete the base game, you can go and test your might against the other trainers in these districts for the Battle Frontier. So it's just like a whole extra area you can try.
That sounds like at least like it would get more hours into the game. And I like that about old games that they include a lot of things where the Battle Frontier would have probably been some sort of DLC.
So
Let's see here.
the Elite Four. So we mentioned them earlier. We got Sydney, the Dark
so
champion.
emo. So emo.
He's so cool. So for Emerald, Sydney's rocking a Myena, a Cacturn, a Shiftry, a Crawdont, been there, done that, and an Absol. So, you know, we got all the whole edgy boys here. Although Ruby and Sapphire, Sydney also has a Sharpedo instead of a Crawdont, and I think that's a lot cooler. I mean, a shark over a lobster, come on.
So Sydney, I think, has a nice lineup. Like you said, the Sharpedo, but, you know, the Sharpedo is not in the Emerald version, but everything else is super edgy. He's just like a grass dark type, which is kind of funny because grass is like literally one of the trashiest types. I know I'm going to probably trigger so many people, but it is pretty trash. But I do love it that he has an Absol. Let's go to the next person, which is Phoebe, the ghost type.
Phoebe, the ghost champion.
The cute girl. Usually every Elite Four has some sort of cute girl in the top.
I don't know. I thought Sydney was pretty adorable, but... So, again, with Phoebe, she does one of the things that kind of annoys me is when a major character has 2 of the same Pokemon in their lineup, and I'm just like, really? Can't we get a little more diversity or variety in this? Because she has 2 Baynets, a Dusclops, a Sableye, and another Dusclops. So not only does she repeat the same Pokemon not once, but twice. And it's just poor little Sableye all by his lonesome.
That shows you how much like Ghost type was not really given too much love in number 3. I really love Ghost type, to be honest.
Yeah,
and
Ghost type
I
is
wish
such a cool type for Pokemon.
And I wish it would get more recognition and more types compared to all the other types that they seem to just pile on and pile on. But other than that, that's pretty much it.
Moving on to the Ice Queen, we have Glacia. And again,
Glacia.
She's repeating the same thing. She's got 2 Celios, and I'm just like, we just got done with this.
Yeah, and then she's got the evolution of Celio, which is that sucker packs a punch. From what I've seen on runs of this, it's usually this one who kills it. It's this and the level 7 gym leader.
The bane of all Nuzlocke runners.
Or level 6, yeah. I tried Nuzlocking for a little bit, but the furthest I got, I think, was Watson, and I can't believe how far people get with this without sometimes even without losing a Pokemon. I think I might not be a true gamer.
Your Doritos and your Mountain Dew and your Cheeto fingers, and you have a girlfriend.
I'm sorry, but where did the Doritos come in?
That's when you get hungry.
so I'm not forced to eat the Doritos.
And moving on to the final Elite Four member before the champion is Drake, the Dragon Trainer.
There's always going to be a dragon type, and dragons are never really weak to really anything except for another dragon type, which I find is kind of funny. Salamence is, to be honest, a really cool design.
Yeah,
Let's see,
I do
what
like how
does
Salamence is like a bit of a generic dragon compared to the other ones on Drake's list, but I think it's pretty solid.
in Ruby and Sapphire you see Flygon twice because I think Seadra was later added in Emerald.
Kingdra.
Kingdra? Is it Kingdra?
Yeah, Kingdra.
Dang. Kingdra replaces the other Flygon, which I like that they did that instead of doing the repeats like they did with the past two. Glacia and Phoebe, I'm looking at you.
His other two is another Altaria, which we've already done, and then Shelgon. And I like Shelgon. He's just such a little angy little thing.
Yeah, he's angry, and he'll definitely hit you where it hurts. Let's move on to our final person, Steven.
Wallace.
The champion.
It's
also Steven.
Wallace.
Wallace Steven.
Wallace?
Steven Wallace.
Yes, okay, so Wallace is the Elite Four regional champion in the Emerald version. And he's got a pretty intimidating lineup here. He's got a Whale Lord, a Whiscash, a Tentacruel, a Ludicolo, a Gyarados, and a Milotic.
Pretty scary front that
I'm in danger.
yeah, that's Stalus. How about we call him Stalus? That Stalus puts onto us. And not to mention, you just went through the Elite Four, and I don't think you can really go to a Pokemon Center that's just down the lane.
It's a gauntlet run. You better prepare all those potions, boy.
Yeah, all those max heal potions. Ugh, so many potions.
We just gotta dope up our Pokemon so they don't feel pain anymore.
Exactly, I guess. But pretty much once you get past them, I can tell you that everything feels alright. It feels just alright. I feel like if I were to complete this Pokemon game, I would have some sort of completion in my life.
Right, so, you ready to wrap this up?
Yeah, I think that we touched on Pokemon for quite enough. It's time to lay it to rest.
Well, at least for Generation 3, because I wouldn't mind returning to Pokemon games in later episodes. I think Diamond, Pearl, Black and White, I would like to talk about those. And of course, there's always the original generation. You gotta talk about that.
Yeah, and definitely talking about all those generations will be a blast to go through. And I can't wait to see where this takes us.
Well, alright. Thank you all for listening to Backwards Compatible. Really appreciate your listenership. If you want to give us any feedback or ask us any questions, then you can email us at backwardscompatiblepod@gmail.com. Check the show notes for more information.